We are literally 1 second, and there it is. It is 8 o'clock on the dot. The polls have just closed there in New Hampshire. We are coming to you with an NBC News election alert at this hour. All right, this is important. The NBC News decision desk is projecting that the race is still too early to call, but that former President Trump leads. You can see those vote totals as they continue to climb. Right now, we're at 12% of the vote in right now. Former President Trump, you see it on your screen, 52% of the vote. Nikki Haley with 47% of the vote at this hour. But again, it is still very, very early. Only 12% of the vote in. As we just mentioned, the NBC News election desk, the decision desk, is still waiting on making a call right now, a projection. All we can say is that Trump is leading, but it's still too early. We're still going to wait for some more votes to come in, some more data to come in. Nikki Haley still looking to pull off a major upset tonight as she faces a make-or-break moment in her campaign. The crowds we saw turning up to vote earlier. We have another election alert coming in right now. They're coming in fast and furious. This is actually a very interesting one. Maybe not surprising, but definitely interesting. NBC News can now project that Joe Biden has won the Democratic primary. Why is this interesting? Well, he didn't compete in the Democratic primary. This is largely from a write-in campaign. Dean Phillips, a Democrat who's trying to challenge Joe Biden on the Democratic side, did campaign in that state. He has lost. NBC News can project that the current president is the winner of the New Hampshire primary. The sort of question here is, will this matter at all in New Hampshire? Because the delegates will not be awarded. South Carolina is going to be the first in the nation primary. Let's go over to Chuck Todd right now to kind of walk us through sort of the interesting conundrum, if you will, the Democrats find themselves in with Joe Biden winning, but no delegates going to be awarded.
Well, right, no delegates are awarded, and we can show you here. And it is worth noting, while we don't know that every single write-in is a Joe Biden write-in. Okay, there was a campaign to write in ceasefire by some Gaza activists. It was legitimate enough that I saw yard signs there myself. So whether this is the full, but, you know, assumed 5% is pulled from that. So the fact of the matter is, this is successful. Look, Dean Phillips not even getting into the 20s, I think is a tough thing. I've talked to his campaign. You know, they'd like to find a place where they actually get to be on the ballot with Joe Biden to see if there's, you know, if there really is a movement here. And the one early state they're looking at after this that they may try to spend money in is Michigan. South Carolina is not a state that you're going to be able to defeat Joe Biden in, but Michigan is certainly.
And let's talk about South Carolina, right? They put Joe Biden over the top a few years ago. And he said, listen, this is more reflective of the Democratic Party. Right. Let's make South Carolina first. New Hampshire voters said it's our law.
Let's remember how Biden did. Biden did so well. Can you find his name on the 2020 results, right?
You got to keep going. Was he five, right?
Fifth. He was fourth.
Fourth?
He was fourth in New Hampshire and fifth in Iowa. Look, it's a warning that Chris Sununu's got to worry about with the New Hampshire Republican primary. Yeah. Because those who are nominees, especially if they become president, they decide what the primary calendar is based on their own personal experiences. And if New Hampshire ends up being the state...
So those 10 delegates, what happens? They go to the convention and what happens?
Well, they'll be seated. Okay. They always say they're not going to seat them. But I'll tell you this, we saw this in 2008. There was Florida and Michigan had this whole thing. Right. Whoever the nominee is, because you know why they're going to seat them? Because New Hampshire's a swing state.
Right.
Okay? If New Hampshire wasn't a swing state, this was Idaho, not a big Democratic state, they might tell them to pound sand. They're not going to tell the New Hampshire electorate to pound sand.
Let's talk about the Republican side, what we have in 13%. It's growing almost by the minute. Tell me, is there anything we can draw from what we have so far?
Yeah, I'm going to take you to one area, and this is in Rochester, New Hampshire. This has been a growing part of the state. It's a growing place. This was some place that she needed to narrow this a little bit. Let me just show you over the last couple of cycles. You can see, I mean, first of all, it's a growing vote. I mean, there already is going to be more vote that's ever turned out in Rochester before, and Trump's doing better. He's already got more raw vote with 68% in than they got the entire time last time. And as you can see, this was not as friendly to the moderate candidates, as you will, but this is why,
if you will.
This is why we're saying he's leading. Yeah. Because she is doing well in the Democratic counties, in the swing counties. So you look at Concord, and she's winning, but she's not winning by the same margins, right? The counties, the townships she's winning are not. This was one she really needed to run up the score, as you can see. And that's the difference here.
Manchester, I know, just closed. Do we have anything from Manchester?
We have a little bit coming out of Manchester. I can show you here. But
wow,
about half the vote.
That's somewhat interesting.
But just to let you, again, so you can see here, Manchester, a little more working class. It really is more of a Trump. It would be a pretty big upset if Haley was able to carry Manchester. But again, Trump's winning by bigger margins in his areas than Haley is in her areas.
Okay. Chuck Todd, we always appreciate that. Hallie Jackson has been out and about for us in the Granite State. First, she was at a polling location. She's made her way to a watch party tonight. Hallie, talk to me about, oh, wait, it looks like it's, is that a saloon? A bar?
It's a bar.
Sure is. What are you hearing from everyone there enjoying a nice beverage, if you will, and some politics to go as well?
That's the thing. Yeah, coming out to see and get a sense of like how their neighbors, how their colleagues, how their community members voted here in this big deal First in the Nation primary. It is kind of a watch party, I will tell you. There's a lot of Fox News on the TVs up here. People are tuning in to see those returns coming in, including people here like Pat, who is bellied up to the bar here. Pat, thank you for chatting with us. Sure thing. How did it go for you today voting? Tell us who you voted for and why.
I actually voted Trump because I like his policies, not necessarily the man. He's a little boastful and sometimes he can be divisive, but overall his policies worked, and I don't think Biden's are, honestly.
Did you ever consider or evaluate potentially any other candidates? Did you consider perhaps backing Nikki Haley, or were you always for former President Trump?
I actually like her too. I think people are familiar with his policies, so they might lean towards him more. But you never know. I mean, it's early voting. She could win in our state and keep going. You know, you just never know. But I think maybe she could run again, maybe down the road. I think she still has a good chance, but it might not be her time yet, you know.
Why did you come out here tonight? Was this about watching the returns come in, being with others?
Actually, I like Fox News, and I like Pete Hegseth, that he's here. So I saw that he was going to be here, so I'm like, maybe we can see him.
Pat, thank you so much for talking with us. We appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of folks out here tonight for a lot of different reasons, Tom. I want to bring you back here to some other folks that we're talking to as well, because one thing that we've seen throughout the course of the evening as the polls have started to close, so much interest here, right? I mean, I've heard you and Chuck talking about it, some of the folks that you have there talking about the engagement here of New Hampshire voters. That's what we're seeing as people want to know, what are the results, Tom?
Hallie Jackson for us. Hallie, we appreciate you. This is our big live remote board. Right here, they're reading out results in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. That's a city we want to watch. Let's listen in.
510. Asa Hutchinson, 0. Peter Jeddick, 0. Perry Johnson, 0. Donald Kojernis, 0. Mary Maxwell, 2. Glenn Peters, 0. S. Peterson Morell, 0. Darius Mitchell, 0. Mike Pence, 0. Vivek Ramaswamy, 2.
All right, we were just listening to the vote count in Portsmouth, but it sounds like we might have missed the two top contenders at the top. It's all right. It's a live event. Those things are happening. Speaking of live events, we have some breaking news in. Mike Memoli just spoke with the Biden new campaign manager of the reelect team. Mike, what's the new reporting you have for us?
Yeah, Tom, I just spoke exclusively with Julie Chavez Rodriguez. She is and has been the Biden campaign manager. But one of the big stories tonight, of course, is the fact that there is some movement within the Biden senior leadership. We have Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is the deputy chief of staff at the White House, was Biden's campaign manager in 2020, will be moving to Delaware to take a senior role in the campaign, as will Mike Donnellan. He's the chief strategist for President Biden, has been for a long time. This is being described as a shakeup, and it is a significant move that the campaign is describing as an acceleration of what was already planned. And so as I spoke with Julie Chavez Rodriguez, I asked her what this means for her, what this means for the campaign. She said, listen, O'Malley Dillon and Donnellan, they are familiar names to the campaign. They are familiar names to me, that this is an all hands on deck approach now as we head into this new phase of the general election campaign. I asked her about the relationship she has with President Biden. Of course, she is the campaign manager. She briefs him at least weekly. And she said that that relationship will continue, that she's excited, that there's a great energy around the campaign, especially after what we saw tonight, which was a rally with President Biden, with Vice President Harris in Virginia, as meant to sort of set up this next phase of the campaign. And so these comments, I think, speak to what the Biden campaign is trying to characterize as sort of a full-time now, all-hands-on-deck approach to the campaign, and not necessarily a shakeup.
Mike Memoli for us tonight. Mike, we appreciate all that new reporting. If you have any other updates from the Biden campaign, let us know. All right, it's 8:09 on the East Coast. New Hampshire, we're watching. Still too early to call by NBC News standards. 15% of the vote in. But here's something that is happening. Donald Trump's lead keeps getting bigger and bigger as more vote comes in. Chuck Toddy's at the big board tonight for us. Chuck, something that you pointed out to me as we get more of this vote in and more of the exit poll data in, something really interesting that actually works in former President Trump's favor.
Well, look, we now can show you the Trump-Haley splits by party. So, as we told you, our reweighting of the exit poll, basically 49% of Republicans. Among those that are Republican that voted in this primary, look at this number that Trump got. He got 74% of self-identified Republicans. Haley, 25%. As you know the math, she needed over 30 now.
But that's not bad. That's not bad, but something bad did happen, right? And you're going to show us now.
It's not bad until you see this number, which here's Haley among independents. She won the independents, but as you saw here, Trump got 75% of GOPers. Haley's getting 61 there. Haley got 25% of GOPers. Trump got 37 there. So there are more Republicans than independents, and Trump did better with independents than she did with Republicans. It's basic algebra, right? We're not even, it's a little bit more than regular addition and subtraction, but you see why we've characterized the race the way we have.
All right, Chuck, I got to interrupt you because we have a key election alert. We just got this election alert from our decision desk. Stand by for breaking news. I think we have a call in New Hampshire. And there it is. NBC News can project that former President Trump has now won the New Hampshire primary, defeating UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Garrett Haake is at the watch party for former President Trump in New Hampshire. The former president, now 2 for 2. Nikki Haley saying this was not going to be a coronation, that she was going to stay in the race. But it's clear when it comes to Iowa voters, New Hampshire voters, the king right now is former President Trump. What are you hearing there in the Trump watch party, the victory party now, Garrett?
Yeah, Tom, just a minute ago, the Trump campaign changed these digital billboards behind us to say Trump wins New Hampshire. And a huge cheer went up from this party that had sort of all the makings of a victory party, but now is starting to get a little rowdy. Now, make no mistake, this was the expected result for the Trump campaign. They thought they would romp in New Hampshire, and we'll find out what the final margin is. But a victory in both Iowa and New Hampshire has usually been a golden ticket to the presidential nomination. And what you're seeing now is the Trump campaign already starting to pivot towards a general election. All of their messaging, including just moments ago a statement from the super PAC supporting Donald Trump, is arguing that every day more from this moment on that this primary continues is a day that Joe Biden gets an advantage he shouldn't have, and that the Republican Party needs to coalesce around Donald Trump. I expect to hear very much that same message from the candidate when he takes the stage here later tonight. And we're hearing it from an army of surrogates who are really trying to kind of close the door on this primary after just these 2 states voting. But again, another victory for Donald Trump in New Hampshire. It was the first state he won in 2016, launched him eventually towards the nomination in that year. The Trump campaign in 2024 is very much hoping this campaign now follows a similar trajectory. Tom?
Garrett, as we have a split screen here, we're looking at the Nikki Haley watch party as well in New Hampshire. Obviously, the feeling there, not as excited, a bit dour, if you will, if we can just judge from what we're seeing, the body language, a lot of people on their phones. Garrett, was there ever a moment tonight where it seemed like Team Trump was nervous, or did they think they had this the whole time?
Team Trump, no, Tom. I mean, the professionals in this campaign, the folks who run it, have done this kind of thing before. They were very confident in their numbers. They were very confident that ultimately core Republican voters were going to come home from their candidate. But the candidate himself, Donald Trump, as he always does, expresses himself on social media, made very clear that he was frustrated with the numbers he was clearly seeing earlier in this evening, talking about the number of Democrats, the number of independent or unaffiliated voters participating in this process. He won New Hampshire by 20 points in 2016, and I think less so the Trump campaign, but more so the Trump candidate expected to see a similar margin in this state. I don't know that that's going to end up being the case here. And so that frustration about the margin was palpable. That frustration at Chris Sununu, the New Hampshire governor, has been palpable throughout the week. But the Trump campaign, I think, never really sweated that this would be a win here. Just sort of how much of a rhetorical advantage would they get towards their argument that the primary needs to end now was sort of the one big question that they faced over the last 36 hours or so.
Garrett, thank you. If you're just joining our coverage, former President Trump, the projected winner by NBC News of the New Hampshire primary. As soon as we get some reporting on when former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley or former President Trump will take the stage to speak in New Hampshire, we're going to bring that information to you live. We also have a team of reporters at the Haley event. As soon as we have new reporting, we're going to bring that to you. I want to bring in our panel back here for more. Hogan, I'm going to start with you. Do the margins matter tonight?
No. I don't think they do. Donald Trump will now be 2-0. Nikki Haley is 0-2. He will win Nevada because she's not on the ballot there. It's a caucus. And then he's ahead big in South Carolina as well. And as I said before, I don't see a world in which Nikki Haley decides to keep going and lose her home state by 35, 40 points, which is what she's on track to do right now. Yes, had it been 1%, really, really close, maybe we could be having that conversation. But this is a decisive win for someone in Donald Trump, where a GOP candidate has never won Iowa and then gone on to win New Hampshire. Not to mention the fact, I believe it's the first time in history, I think Garrett said, where the amount of independents and Democrats voted in the GOP primary outweighed the number of Republicans. It's a huge deal for him to take both of these states.
To win both and win both over 50%. And as Hogan says, he's going to win Nevada. It's not contested. And Haley will try to stay in for a while, I think, which is not going to be a happy experience for her. The entire conservative media is going to attack her for staying in, saying this thing's over. Why are you helping Joe Biden? And if she stays through South Carolina, she's going to lose handily there as well.
Tara, I want to read from the Nikki Haley campaign memo that was put out before the voting was done in New Hampshire. It was a very effective memo, if you will. And they write, listen, we started with 2% 11 months ago, $0 in the bank. No one thought we had a shot. No one thought we could get it done. And here we are, $50 million raised, over 200 stops, and 12 fellas later, and Nikki's still standing. Will she still be standing after this loss?
I think the margins do matter. If it's a double-digit loss, then it will be difficult. Earlier, I said I thought it was a fait accompli anyway, that Donald Trump would be the nominee, and I didn't see a path for her regardless of the results tonight, even if she did win. But at this point, I'm not surprised by the result. We'll see at the end. We only have, 16% in. We'll see what the margins are at the end. But it's also a matter of whether donors still feel comfortable giving her money. We all know, we've been in campaigns long enough to know that you stay in the race as long as you have money.
That's right.
And so if the Koch network and other donors feel as though they can still support her and that memo is something they think it creates a path, then she'll stay in. But to Hogan's point, she is losing by 30 to 40 points in her home state. I don't know any campaign where losing that decisively in your home state shows there's a path for you to gain momentum to move forward after that. So I think they're going to have a lot of discussion. Now, the primary isn't until February 24th. So does she stay in and still hammer Trump and think that somehow that's going to weaken him moving forward? Maybe, but I don't see why. I don't see that really being realistic for her.
If you'd been told, if any of us been told, I know if I'd been told a year ago, even 3 months ago, Nikki Haley finished at whatever it's going to be, 45% in New Hampshire, I would have been shocked. I mean, she's overperformed in this campaign, but she's just, the way she's campaigned, the way she's been branded, the way she's been attacked, she's just too far over on the non-Trump side of the party, where you can get that in a state where independents are a huge swing vote, and they're coming all in because they don't have a Democratic contest, but that's just not going to be replicated elsewhere, and she's not going to be, DeSantis couldn't get enough of the Trump vote and widen into the non-Trump vote because she had it. She has a grip on the non-Trump vote, but won't be able to get further into the party to get to a winning plurality or majority places.
We know former President Trump likes to speak late on these nights, but when he does speak, Hogan, what do you think we're going to hear from him?
I think you're going to hear a very similar message to the one you heard after Iowa. He's going to thank Nikki most likely. He will also talk about the need to unify and focus on Joe Biden, as he is the enemy, he believes, of this party and of this country. And I would imagine that's
Hogan, I got to interrupt you
takes.
because we do have some breaking news. It looks like Nikki Haley's about to take the stage after losing New Hampshire. Here's the former UN ambassador now.
What a great night. God is so good all the time. Thank you, New Hampshire, for the love, the kindness, the support, and a great night here tonight. Thank you so much. want to first say thank you to my husband, who I know is watching right now. I love you. We're excited to have you. Thank you. I want to thank my kids who are here, Rena and Naylan and Josh, who have really kind of stepped up and just given me the support I need. You know, you really pull on your family when something like this happens, and I am incredibly blessed by their support. I have my parents at home, and I will always say that the way they raised me, to know that we lived in the best country in the world, but to also know that the best way you appreciate your blessings is to give back. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I love you so much. To my siblings, to my in-laws, to everybody back at home, to Vicki for helping me take care of Mom and Dad. Thank you for that. You know, I will tell you, it feels like it's been a lifetime, but it has been almost a year that we've been campaigning in New Hampshire, touching every hand, answering every question, being the last person to leave. And we had the most amazing thing happen is the second that we got the endorsement from Governor Chris Sununu. I mean, a true governor that doesn't stand behind a podium. He shows up at a diner. He shows up at the brewery. He loves the people of New Hampshire. He has been with me every single day at every single event. Chris, I couldn't have done it without you. And I want to thank someone who was with me on day one. He's a patriot. He's a hardcore conservative. And he is my friend, General Don Bolduc. And Sharon, thank you so much. I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory tonight. He earned it, and I want to acknowledge that. Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. It's not over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina. At one point in this campaign, there were 14 of us running. And we were at 2% in the polls. Well, I'm a fighter. And I'm scrappy. And now we're the last one standing next to Donald Trump. And today we got close to half of the vote. We still have a ways to go, but we keep moving up. For a lot of people, politics is way too personal. It's not personal for me. I voted for Trump twice. I was proud to serve America in his cabinet. I agree with many of his policies. I decided to run because I'm worried about the future of our country and because it's time to put the negativity and chaos behind us. We have an economy that's crushing middle-class Americans. We have a border that is totally open and dangerous, creating a disaster in our country.
Unbelievable!
We have We have schools that are failing too many of our children, and we have a world on fire with a war in Europe and the Middle East and a huge and growing threat from China. And then you look at Washington, D.C. We have a Congress that fights about everything and accomplishes nothing. And we have Joe Biden in the White House making one bad decision after another, when he's making any decisions at all. Our country's in a real mess. We need an accountant. And the question is, who's going to fix it? With Donald Trump, Republicans have lost almost every competitive election. We lost the Senate. We lost the House. We lost the White House. We lost in 2018. We lost in 2020. And we lost in 2022. The worst kept secret in politics is how badly the Democrats want to run against Donald Trump. They know Trump is the only Republican in the country who Joe Biden can defeat. You can't fix the mess if you don't win an election. A Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. I defeat Biden handily. With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos. The other day, Donald Trump accused me of not providing security at the Capitol on January 6th. Now, I've long called for mental competency tests for politicians over the age of 75. Trump claims he'd do better than me in one of those tests. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But if he thinks that, then he should have no problem standing on a debate stage with me. Most Americans do not want a rematch between Biden and Trump. The first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election. And I think it should be the Republicans that win this election. So our fight is not over, because we have a country to save. In the next 2 months, millions of voters in over 20 states will have their say. We should honor them and allow them to vote. And guess what? In the next 2 months, Joe Biden isn't going to get any younger or any better. We'll have all the time we need to defeat Joe Biden. When we get to South Carolina, Donald Trump's going to have a harder time falsely attacking me. The great people of South Carolina know I cut their taxes. They know I signed the toughest illegal immigration bill in the country. They know we passed voter ID and tort reform and ethics reform. And they know we moved 35,000 people from welfare to work.
We've just been listening to former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley deliver her concession speech there in New Hampshire, but making it very clear she is not going anywhere. She is staying in this race and using this time to thank her supporters, thank her family, but then going full throttle against Donald Trump, saying that she would take a mental competency test over 75, that he should take one, that he's scared to debate her, that a Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. Clearly, she's not going anywhere, saying she's staying until South Carolina, till Super Tuesday, at least for now. It's what she's saying tonight. Our panel's here along with Chuck Todd. Chuck, I'm going to start with you. At first, we weren't sure where she was going with this speech, but then she made it clear. I'm sticking around. I'm not going anywhere. And there's all these states left.
There were a lot of family thank yous. Yeah, it made you wonder, like, oh, where's this going? That was, and then she said, I'm not going anywhere. Look, I understand the desire to get to Super Tuesday because there are quite a few states that have similar ballot rules as New Hampshire, and she's got a path to 45% in a lot of places, which could accumulate some delegates. The question is, does she have a path to 50% plus one anywhere? And the real problem she has is Super Tuesdays in March. I'm checking the calendar again. Today's still January, right?
Yeah.
She's got to slog the next 31 days before we get to South Carolina, with the only contest being is at Nevada, I believe, which she's not participating in because of the weird caucus rules. So this momentum that she was able to create over the last 3 weeks, how does she get it? There's no debate, right? What's an event? Her biggest fear, the donors that have been pouring money into her over the last couple of months, they're focused on one thing. They don't want Biden-Trump. Haley is the vehicle to try to stop Biden-Trump. If this vehicle can't work, they're going to look for other vehicles. The no labels business, what she's got to worry about is, do her donors give her enough money to go through Super Tuesday, or do they say, you know what, I'm not throwing any more money on this. I'm going to try the no label. Now I'm going to go to no labels. That's, to me, the next week we're going to find out, and she's going to find out how confident her donors are in her. To try to go through.
Our Nikki Haley embed, Greg Hyatt, tells me that tomorrow, this week, and next week, I think she's meeting with donors on Wall Street to get more money from New York and other states to try to keep her campaign alive. I want to go to a graphic we've made. Former President Trump out on Truth Social, putting his reaction to his victory, but also the Nikki Haley concession speech. He started by saying, Haley said she had to win in New Hampshire. She didn't. He goes on to say more. She came in third last week, exclamation point. And then finally, this last one, delusional, exclamation point, exclamation point. I want to bring back our fine panel here who, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley called the political class, right? Over the conversation we were just having with you guys.
She was referring to Hogan.
She was just referring to Hogan, okay.
Right.
Rich, but she says it's not over. Is she wrong?
I think she probably is. This doesn't surprise me that she came out and still in it. As long as you're in it, you've got to be in it and say you're going to fight and you're going to win. She's going after Trump in a pretty tough way. It doesn't feel as though there's an off-ramp there that she's expecting, onto his ticket. But Chuck described the slog, the month until South Carolina, and then.
But why can't she get stronger? Is it just too hard?
It's possible, but South Carolina, she's polling really poorly in South Carolina. It's a strong Trump state, and it's a state that demonstrates how Trump has this ability. He's still an outsider, right? He has his outsider vibe, outsider appeal to a lot of people. At the same time, he is in some ways, in many ways, the establishment candidate. So Hogan was mentioning earlier, every elected official in South Carolina is behind Trump. You'd expect the former governor to have that, but he's the former president that everyone expects to win, and it's going to be really tough for her down there.
So, Tara, I saw you watching this speech. You're a never-Trumper. Did she motivate you? Do you now want her to stay in the race longer?
I mean, look, I told you, I felt as though they were always running for second place from the very beginning. Both Nikki Haley, DeSantis, all of them. When they had an opportunity to go after Trump and cut him off at the knees, they didn't didn't take it. So you can't play footsie with MAGA and then expect to beat them in the end. Like, they just never ran the type of campaign to take Trump out from the beginning. So anyone who stays in the race that weakens Donald Trump in the general election, I'm fine with it. I mean, she can go right ahead and do that if it weakens him. I saw some interesting numbers here. Even though she didn't win enough independents, she needed to win about 65% of the independents in New Hampshire. She won 61%. But if we look at those numbers and break down those suburban areas and those independents, it shows weakness for Trump in the general. And I think that's the value that she brings, is showing people who are still voting. They're not voting for Trump necessarily, but they're voting for Trump, but not in the ways that he would need for a general election. So that's the only value that I see.
Is there enough money out there to keep her alive past South Carolina? Is there enough money out there?
I mean, there's lots of money out there.
But is there enough? But is there enough money that's going to be written to say, okay, we believe in you?
Well, that's what I said earlier. It depends on what the Koch network does and those donors. There are major billionaires out there. There's Wall Street guys out there that are looking for somewhere to put their money. Do they see a path for her? I'm not so sure, because everyone we've seen so far, from Jamie Dimon on down in the Wall Street class, they're beginning to coalesce behind Trump again because they like tax cuts.
Right.
That's right.
Hogan, before we start with you, I do want to put the poll up on our screen. This is South Carolina, the next contest in the GOP race for the nomination. And the numbers here, they're just not great for Nikki Haley. 64% for Trump, 25% for Haley there. You're from South Carolina. You look at these numbers, you hear her speech, and listen, if you're on the fence for Nikki Haley, you hear her speech, she sounds like she still wants to fight, that she's a warrior, she's ready to go into South Carolina. But what's going to happen when she gets here, do you think?
They're all going to stay in until they don't.
Right.
DeSantis was going to stay in until he didn't. The same thing applies here. What else is she going to say unless she wants to get out and endorse Trump tonight, which she's not going to do? She feels as though this race is between herself and Donald Trump, and it is. I mean, there are more people on the Democrat primary ticket than there are on the Republican side. But the point has been made here ad nauseum, but it's worth saying again, and that is, it is very difficult for someone like Nikki Haley, who, yes, was governor of this state and also won re-election there, to be down so far and expect to win her home state. Everyone in South Carolina, the statewide office holders at the local level, the governor, the attorney general, they're all lining up behind Donald Trump. And even, as we said, Tim Scott, a senator from the state of South Carolina, someone Nikki Haley put in his position, appointed him, and he is for Donald Trump. I just don't see a world in which she continues.
You've run campaigns that have come out successful in Iowa, and then later had to keep raising money until it got to a point where it was just, there was
New
reality
Hampshire
there.
always been Hogan's weak spot. Rated Iowa.
But talk to me about the conversations with donors. When you're on the Nikki Haley campaign and you're picking up the phone tonight, what is the pitch to donors?
Well, interestingly enough, the Wall Street conversation hurts her with the GOP base. You're telling me she's going to go to Wall Street and ask for more money? That's a pariah. Like when she was given the Koch money in politics on the Republican side, typically you would say, wow, look at this great boost of influx of money. Now it's like, wait, of course she would get the Koch money because she's an establishment globalist like they are. So it's not necessarily a good thing. I don't know what she says other than, hey, we're going to get through South Carolina and then we're going to play in. She's got to have a strategy that's specific, because these people are millionaires and billionaires, not by being stupid, but by knowing how to invest money to get a return. And if they don't see a return in any of these states, I don't know what kind of pitch she's going to make.
It's a pragmatic. She's a vehicle, right? It's not like they'll crawl over broken glass for Nikki Haley because they believe so deeply in her. They think she has a shot, and if they conclude she doesn't, they'll go someplace else.
Ali Vitale is at the Haley campaign headquarters. She was there watching that speech unfold as well. Ali, talk to me about what stood out to you, because in the beginning it almost sounded like she was going to say, I'm out of this race, but then she, again, just went straight after Donald Trump and didn't let her foot off the gas.
You know what, though? In Iowa, Tom, she started the same way, by profusely thanking her family and the people who helped her get to this position in the first place, thanking her husband who's serving a tour overseas, thanking her kids for stepping up in the meantime, and thanking the governor of the state of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, who was a driving force behind the way that she barnstormed in this state in the closing week of the primary here. He was with her in diners, at coffee shops, and, of course, at town halls. Now, of course, Haley thanking him
him from this big stage and announcing early in the night that she's going to be staying in. It sort of reminded me of back in 2020 when Amy Klobuchar in Iowa came out early, said she did well enough to call it a win by her standards, and then moved on to New Hampshire. That's kind of what Haley is doing right here in New Hampshire, trying to just bounce on into what she keeps calling sweet South Carolina because it's her home state. I think your panel's right to point out it is a real slog there for a number of reasons, specifically the idea that there's less college plus age voters there, the idea that this is really a place that, as we were talking about before, was one of the first real places that we saw Trump country begin to show its power in 2016. Nevertheless, there were some parts of Nikki Haley's speech that really stood out to me, specifically just the general way that she is basically making an open invitation to anyone who, like her, voted for Trump twice, not served in his administration, though she points out that she did that for him as well, and liked his policies. She's now inviting them, hey, if you like all those things and you voted for him twice, I will offer you those things without the chaos, without the court cases, without, in her words, the senior moments. Talking about Trump in the most direct fashion that we've heard her do it, challenging him to debate her, challenging him in some ways to take a mental fitness or mental acuity test. She said that on the day that she announced her presidential bid almost a year ago in South Carolina. She said, if you are over 75, you should be taking a mental fitness test. Clearly, she's challenging Trump on that front now almost directly. This is a real moment where we're watching Nikki Haley take her most direct shots at Trump yet, but we're also watching her make age the key issue here in this race. It's almost the thing that she says with reluctance and a little twinge of sadness that she almost hates to be saying this about her rival, but it is the seed that she's continued to plant in the minds of voters, both here in New Hampshire and, of course, down the rest of the primary calendar as she goes. That's the one thing that Trump's not going to be able to change. He's not going to be able to change how old he is, and frankly, neither is Joe Biden. And it plays upon a fear that I've already heard from Republicans. Republicans have done a really good job of instilling concern about Joe Biden's age and acuity. Now Nikki Haley is lumping him in with Donald Trump, and that makes the concern tougher. It is a very subtle way to dig into the minds of voters, and she's hoping that this is an issue that can be a wedge that she can use to get to the nomination.
Allie, before you go, does the margin of victory matter here? Because as we watch more of the vote come in, the spread's getting wider and wider. We're now a double-digit lead with former President Trump over Nikki Haley. If this turns out to be a shellacking, do you think she eventually drops out, or do you think that's it? She's made the speech. She's sticking in this at least until South Carolina.
It's going to matter hugely, and I think that's why she came out as early as she did, because right now we're looking at the results and we're thinking, well, it looks a lot closer than we thought it would be. Her campaign team is seeing that too. It was a shrewd move for them to come out early and say, this was good enough, we did really well, let's go to what they would call maybe greener pastures in South Carolina. But again, we can't underscore enough how tough of a slog that is. But the margin is going to matter immensely here, because when she goes to meet her donors in New York and Texas and across the country, that's going to be the proof of purchase, the return on investment. How close can she actually get to Donald Trump? How much of a match can she actually make this?
All right, Ali Vitale for us from the Haley watch party tonight. Ali, we appreciate all your reporting. Please stand by. Joining us now live, Frank Luntz, a pollster and political strategist, and analyst and former Democratic Senator from Missouri, Claire McCaskill. We appreciate you guys both being here. Frank, I'm going to start with you. You wrote the book, Words That Matter. Any of the words that Nikki Haley said tonight, will they matter with Republican voters?
Yes, they will, but we still can't tell whether it's a double-digit win or not. That question that you asked your colleague moments ago is the question. If she loses by less than 10%, she has permission to go on, voter permission. If that becomes a double-digit loss, it's hard to see how she recovers. In terms of her language, three things that matter. Number one, electability. Does she have what it takes to beat Joe Biden? Number two, chaos. You hear her use that word all the time. Is she the kind of leader that the Republicans are looking for? And number three, can she capture that unaffiliated, that vote that isn't so hardcore Republican, to demonstrate that she can put together a majority in these other states? The first two, arguably, yes. The last one is much tougher, and that's why the final margin of tonight matters considerably.
Frank, I do want to ask you, though, when you look at this race and you listen to her message and you've helped craft so many speeches and phrases for candidates that have won races, did she craft her message too late? Did she sort of get her voice too late in this process?
That's a great question. And if you watch her debate performance, she got better as time went on. She found her voice. She found the language, the messaging that put her as close as it did here in New Hampshire. But this is the best state for her. Independents can vote here. Moderates are a significant percentage of the Republican vote. Her message is so attuned to them. But you cannot forget Donald Trump's intensity. The level of passion and support of his supporters is unlike anything I've seen in my career. Unlodging them or dislodging them is pretty darn hard. And clearly she hasn't succeeded to the level that she wanted to do tonight.
Frank, is it frustrating to you as somebody who's worked with so many Republicans that close to 50%, maybe more, maybe a little less, of Republicans don't want former President Trump, and yet he's going to be the nominee?
I don't think the word is frustrating. I do want a positive message. I do want someone who's hopeful. I want someone who's focused on the future. The governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, who just walked into the room right across from me, right here. You can hear the noise as he's walking in. He's the kind of Republican that this country needs to look and find a more positive approach. Donald Trump understands his voters. He gets them, and he knows how to deliver the kind of speech and the kind of message that they're looking for. Nikki Haley, it's a little tougher because, quite frankly, the Republican Party of 2024 is not the Republican Party of 10 years ago.
Frank Luntz, we appreciate that as they're continuing to count votes there in Milford, New Hampshire, on the left side of the screen. Senator Claire McCaskill, you've won elections, you've lost elections. I asked Hogan this question, but you've had to do this. How hard is it now to call your supporters in South Carolina, call your election teams, get them excited, and then call your donors and say, I need you to write another check?
I don't think it's going to be hard at all for Nikki Haley to raise money. She got plenty of money. That's not her problem. But I got to turn this on its head a little bit. I mean, really, this is the former president, which is like an incumbent to the Republican Party. And he managed 50% in Iowa. He's at 50% in New Hampshire of his own party. Now, I know in New Hampshire, unaffiliated voters can vote in the Republican primary. But I don't see how this is necessarily a show of strength for him. I mean, Joe Biden's going to get more than 50%. He's not even on the ballot.
Yeah.
So I think this shows that there is in the Republican Party voters that do not want Trump, strongly do not want Trump, and I believe that those are open for Joe Biden to get, and that could be the difference in this election.
So you're saying if you had a say in this, you'd want this Republican race to shake out because you don't think that this is what the party needs right now, because if there's half the party or around half the party that doesn't like a candidate, let the process play out.
Well, I think we've seen in Washington, the Republican Party is really divisive right now. I mean, they can't lead the House. They can't even do the business of the government because they're so busy fighting among themselves between the MAGA wing of the party and, frankly, the Nikki Haley wing of the party. Now, no question, Trump has the majority of the Republican Party that is part of the MAGA group now. They are with Trump, and I think he'll win the nomination. But don't discount that they have a real war within their party, and part of that is among the folks that have funded the Republican Party by and large for most of its history.
Senator Claire McCaskill brings a good point. Hogan, I want to bring it over to you now. I mean, is she right? You know, can Trump get the rest of the party behind him, and more importantly, there by November?
Sure. I mean, look, like ice cream is not ice cream. Like the incumbent is not the incumbent. This is a much different situation that Donald Trump sees himself in as opposed to someone like Joe Biden, who's the sitting president. Donald Trump clearly has a stranglehold on the GOP voter. There is a massive amount of people on our side who want to see a second term for Donald Trump, who love those America First policies that improve the lives of all Americans, and they want to see a return to that. The question becomes, can he take that and expand the party and get some of the independents, which is what we've been talking about for a long time. This, as always, these presidential elections are a referendum on somebody.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be on? If we can make it about Joe Biden and his failures, we have a really good chance of taking back the White House. If not, and it's about Donald Trump, then we've got an issue. But this campaign, I should say, is so much different because it's not in a vacuum. We're actually talking about a candidate in Donald Trump who has a record as president, and now we have Joe Biden also has a record as president, and you can butt those up against each other and ask yourself that famous question Reagan did, is your life better today than it was 4 years ago?
Senator McCaskill?
Well, first of all, presidential politics is famous for personalities mattering.
Sure.
And whether or not somebody is likable and whether somebody wants someone in their living room for 4 years. That's where I think Donald Trump has a real problem, especially with swing voters and independent voters that don't eat politics all day long like all of us do, that don't live and breathe it every day. They know he represents chaos. They know he represents a guy who is more interested in driving grievance than he is aspiration. They know he is not somebody who's ever talked about uniting the country. He has always talked about dividing the country. So I think that will come into play also. It will be an important part of this. You heard all these Republican voters today that we've interviewed in New Hampshire. So many of them said, well, you know, he's arrogant. I don't like him, but I liked his policies. It matters in presidential politics. And those were, you know, diehard Republicans.
Right.
So when you get to an independent voter, it really makes a difference.
Personality matters. The economy matters as well. And we'll have to see where the economy is as we get closer to November. Rich Lauer, you've covered Trump as well, his rise in the Republican Party. Talk to me about potentially the viciousness that is going to be unleashed now on Nikki Haley and the Nikki Haley campaign as they go into South Carolina. We're seeing just a taste of it tonight.
Yeah, the line on her will be, it's over. She needs to get over it and get with the team and not hurt Donald Trump, who's the only vehicle to beat Joe Biden. And I just don't think it's going to be very happy 4 weeks for her up to South Carolina, and she's probably going to lose South Carolina. I will say both Claire and Hogan are right. If either of these parties were able to switch someone out, which is not going to happen, but if it was someone else besides Biden or Kamala Harris, they'd beat Trump easily. If it was someone else besides Trump, they'd beat Biden easily. But that's not going to happen. You have, according to the poll, you know, roughly Joe Biden's 35% approval, Donald Trump's 35% approval, right? And it's
a
50-50
race. Well, a lot of clear, though, Donald Trump has never beaten Joe Biden. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump, despite what Donald Trump has been trying to tell people. In his mind, he thinks he's the incumbent, right? He's never acknowledged that he actually lost the election, which is why we're where we are with this with him. But the other thing, too, is that, to Claire's point, independent voters and the moderate voters in the Republican Party who don't like Donald Trump are going to be the people who decide this election in Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Arizona. And those people, as we get closer, when they pay more attention and realize that this is a Trump-Biden race and what Donald Trump represents, which means less rights for their daughters, with daughters having less rights than their grandmothers do, thanks to the extreme MAGA position on women's reproductive health, that's something that is going to not sit well with women. When they look at Donald Trump's behavior and what he says and how vicious, you talk about viciousness, this is just the tip of the iceberg. When we get closer, are they going to step back and say, is this the type of America that we want again? Are we going to go through this again? Someone who incites insurrections, someone who thinks they want to be a dictator on day one, someone who doesn't believe in our democracy, someone who mocks people, someone who's a criminal defendant. I think when people start to pay more attention and there's a binary choice, which there will be, those independents are not going to break for Donald Trump.
That's entirely possible, and those are all obviously vulnerabilities for Trump. But one of the most extraordinary thing in the polling is there's this kind of this nostalgia about the Trump presidency. You ask people, who are you better off under, whose policies you thought were better in the country, and Trump wins on those metrics compared to Joe Biden.
Well, the Biden campaign has work to do on that, despite the fact that right now the economy is actually doing pretty good. We are the #1 oil producers in the world, so the energy argument is actually a fallacy. Inflation is down to 3% from 9%. The Biden passed infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act. They're actually governing, but it's up to the Biden campaign to actually sell that message so the American people feel what the reality is going on.
Hogan, I heard you say earlier, and I just got to jump in here and say, I will make you a really friendly $1 wager that Donald Trump will not thank Nikki Haley tonight.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, he'll take that.
We'll take that.
If you just join us, NBC News has projected that Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire primary. Hallie Jackson is in New Hampshire talking to voters about this reaction, about this victory tonight. Hallie, what are they telling you?
Let me have him tell you, Tom. We've been here at this bar where folks are watching the returns come in, watching some of the results. This is Ed. I'm sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. Greetings. You voted for former President Trump?
I did. I voted for Donald Trump.
Tell us why.
Well, I just feel like he's not beholden to anybody. Like, he doesn't take any money from donors. He just loves America, and I think he just wants the best for America.
NBC News has now projected that the former president has won this primary. Your reaction here?
Well, I'm happy about that. So I hope he can go on and win the general election in November and take down whoever's going to run for the Democratic Party. I don't think Biden's going to be their candidate, but the country's going in the wrong direction. I mean, what's going on here? Like, the economy is bad. The border is wide open. I feel like there's so much corruption going on in government on both sides, Republican and Democrats.
Do you believe that Nikki Haley should drop out of this race? There's been some discussion around that. You saw the current chair of the Republican National Committee come out tonight and say that listen, we don't know what the margins are, but she said if Donald Trump has a strong showing, that sends a clear message about where the electorate is at, about unity here in the party. And yet Nikki Haley says, hey, listen, this is not a coronation. People deserve the chance to make their voices heard. What say you?
Well, I believe that Nikki Haley has a chance. Like, I don't think she should drop out just yet. I think there's like a flavor for her in this country. But I feel like Trump is the person that the people want. Like, I feel like he's the only candidate that loves America. Like, I think Nikki Haley's beholden to rhinos. I feel like she's a rhino, and she's part of the Uniparty. Like I was trying to allude to earlier, she's with, like, the Democrats and the Republicans that are part of this Uniparty that I feel like are in control, and there's no way out. We need somebody that loves America.
Ed, thank you so much for talking with us. Obviously, happy, as you say, that former President Trump is projected to win in here. It looks like we will be chatting with you and others throughout the night. Thank you very much. So I want to walk you back a little bit. And listen, you heard it there, right? The rationale from some of these folks who have backed former President Trump, who see the results here tonight, that he appears to have the lead, of course, projected to win here. What we don't know is by how much. I want to bring over to somebody else who's backing former President Trump, who voted for him today. Jamie, that's you, right? Voted for former President Trump today.
Absolutely did.
We have now projected the race for him.
I am so happy to hear all this. This is great. I'm surprised it was as close as it was, to be honest with you. I didn't think she was going to actually get that much, but it's crazy.
We still don't know what the margins are at this point, and I asked one of your fellow folks over here enjoying the evening here at this bar, the Goat in Manchester, do you think Nikki Haley should drop out of the race?
I do. I think it's about time that she drops out, just like the rest of them have. And I think, I got to be honest, I think Vivek is amazing. We did a couple of events with him, and the guy is absolutely class act in everything he stands for. And I hope he stands with Trump, because I think he could be after Trump.
Talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, Jamie, of course, at this bar here, the Goat, you said he had a couple events here. Do you think he could be potential VP material?
I mean, I don't know about VP, but I think he should work with Trump side by side. I would love to see it, and his crew is absolutely amazing. I mean, amazing. The class act, for real.
Jamie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking with us tonight. And this is going to be the scene throughout the night here. As we turn ahead now, and I'll tell you where I'm going actually tomorrow is South Carolina, because that is a state where Nikki Haley is now eyeing. It is obviously, I'm going to post up here for just 1 second. It is obviously her home state. It is a place that she is already, and you heard it in her speech tonight, in her remarks now, she's already casting her eyes on her home state. The issue with that is that it is simply, and we've been talking about it here on this program and this special, it doesn't have the same kind of demographic makeup that New Hampshire does as it relates to some of those undeclared or more independent-minded voters who we've seen have been breaking for Nikki Haley here. South Carolina, different vibe, different situation, a real question mark as to whether she is going to be able to pull together the same kind of coalition and have a strong showing there. There's, I think, some skepticism in the broader Republican orbit that could actually happen. So we will see what the margin is here for former President Trump. He, for his part, is already casting his eye on November toward the general election. We have heard that and seen that time and time again. at his rallies, even just recently, overnight here at his latest rally, talking about how he wants to take it to President Biden come November. That is part of the dynamic here. Now, keep in mind the other piece of this here. We will talk to a couple other folks about this in just a second. Actually, these guys. Hi. Voters, did you vote today? Tell me who you voted for.
Donald Trump.
Okay. Reaction. He's projected to win here in New Hampshire. What do you think?
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, we called it. I mean, it looks like we're saying he's projected to win.
Oh, it's excellent because, I think if you're voting for Haley, you're voting for war. So Trump is the way to go. No wars.
One of the things that we were just about to get into, this is a former president, and I spoke with him today at a campaign event at a polling site, actually, very briefly. He's facing some legal challenges here. Does that concern you? Does that bother you at all?
No, that's all political stuff. That's going to go by the wayside. I'm not worried about that at all.
Thank you for chatting with us. I appreciate it. I mean, that is one of the things that has come up on the campaign trail. Former President Trump obviously facing multiple indictments. You saw Ron DeSantis, one of his former rivals, today blame that in part for why DeSantis' campaign never really took off, because he said that some Republicans rallied around former President Trump because of those legal issues. So, Tom, that's kind of the lay of the land where we are here in Manchester. I will see you either later tonight or in South Carolina soon.
Hallie, with all that hard work you're doing over there, are they at least offering you a beer? Are they offering you wings? I mean, tell me you're getting some love out there.
Can I just say, I'm going to have a burger and then no comment on what happens when we're off the air. We'll let that just live here in Manchester.
That'll be off the record. Hallie Jackson, thank you so much for that. We are at the top of the hour. Our coverage of the first in the nation primary continues right now.
NBC News Special, Decision 2024, the New Hampshire primary. Reporting tonight, Tom Yamas.
And good evening. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the New Hampshire presidential primary. It has been a big night for former President Trump, but Nikki Haley refusing to back down. To get you up to speed, NBC News projecting that former President Trump has won the New Hampshire primary, defeating his last standing challenger, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Right now, you can see where the vote's at, about 28% of the vote in, and you can see Donald Trump expanding his lead here. The Haley campaign saying they are not going to drop out of this race. You can see Trump's lead, though, even still starting to widen. But within minutes of that call, Haley did this. She came right out at her campaign headquarters in New Hampshire, addressing supporters in a fiery and defiant speech and going after Trump.
New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
We are now waiting to hear the victory speech from the former president that could come at any moment, and we will bring it to you live as soon as it happens. I want to get right over to Garrett Hake. He's standing by at the Trump campaign headquarters. He's been watching all of this. So, Garrett, my first question to you is, what do we expect to hear from the former president? Because I think we've already got a sense of it on Truth Social, and it sounds like he's getting angrier and angrier that Nikki Haley has not dropped out.
Yeah, Tom, I think that's right. And it's notable because after he won in Iowa, we saw a very conciliatory tone from Donald Trump in his victory speech there. And we may yet see that tone tonight. He knows he's going to have a huge audience across the country, not just Republican primary voters, but the voters, the swingy voters that he hopes to win over in a general election. And he wants to project a kind of calm competence and try to unite Republicans, including Haley voters, behind him. That said, on his social media platform, his first commentary on the fact that Nikki Haley was speaking and not dropping out tonight was to call her delusional and to suggest that she basically failed to meet the high bar that she set for herself of winning in New Hampshire. So I think what we can expect is really a two-pronged approach from the Trump campaign going forward, to try to show that they can be open-armed to even Nikki Haley and her supporters, like they have been to the other candidates who've dropped out of this race, to try to rebuild the Big Ten of the Republican Party. And by the way, they've already gotten 2 senatorial endorsements
endorsements tonight, one from Josh Hawley, who was always sort of a Trump guy, but one from John Cornyn, who I can tell you is nobody's idea of a MAGA senator on Capitol Hill, kind of coming back into the fold tonight. But they're also going to start to make Nikki Haley's life very miserable and very lonely. About 5 minutes after this race was called, Tom, I turned around to see South Carolina Senator Tim Scott walk into the ballroom as a guest of the Trump campaign. He's now about to become probably one of the most recognizable political surrogates in the country. Likewise with South Carolina's Republican governor, a Trump endorser, the other senator, Lindsey Graham, a Trump endorser, and much of their congressional delegation. They want to put Nikki Haley on an island, and that's what they're going to be doing over the next 3-4 weeks until the South Carolina primary, if she stays in the race that long.
It is not going to be an easy race. All right, Garrett Haake, we appreciate all your reporting. We're going to stand by with you, and as soon as the former president takes the stage, we are going to take you live. We do want to get you updated on where the vote stands right now. As we've projected here at NBC News, Donald Trump, the winner of the New Hampshire primary. A lot of the votes still coming in. The big question now, how big is this margin, right? It's grown from double digits to even more than that. We're about 13% right now. So we know that Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire primary, but the question tonight is, how did he win this primary? Chuck Todd is over at the big board. He's got some of the data coming in. And Chuck, during the commercial break, you were pointing something out to me. You're like, this is sort of incredible for New Hampshire, and this is actually very strong for the president, former president. What did you see?
Well, it's the gender gap, but let me just go through the basics here, right? These were the biggest groups for him. He's defining what conservative is. He won 88% of those voters. And, of course, we've been talking about this all night. About half the electorate was Republican. Well, he won 75% of half the electorate. The problem is Nikki Haley didn't win 75% of independents, right? She won just under that. He did well with working-class voters, voters with incomes under 50, and, of course, those without a college degree. But where he really, just another straight-up way of seeing this is, look at this massive gender gap here. Donald Trump won men by nearly 20 points, 58%, 40, 51% was male. Now, let me show you what the female split was. Nikki Haley won it by a point.
Wow.
Okay, you can do the math.
These were female voters in the New Hampshire,
New Hampshire electorate.
Okay.
So, you know, this has been a problem for her. She doesn't seem to benefit from anybody voting on gender, or not benefiting enough, while Donald Trump overperforms with men in general. Some of this has been abortion rights, which is why we've seen more women flock against the president. But you can do the math here. Okay, this is why a double-digit victory now looks more likely than not.
We have talked about margins, right, and that the margins are going to matter here in New Hampshire. I'm looking up at one of the screens right now. We got 30% of the vote in. We'll pull it up here.
Yep.
And now you have 55.8, 42.6. This keeps growing as more vote comes in. Do you think that that's going to be the trend?
It is, because look, there's a ton of stuff that isn't reported here on the border of Massachusetts. And why do those towns matter? The Taxachusetts label, right, is basically former Massachusetts residents who moved across the way in no tax New Hampshire. This is always a very heavily Republican area. So, for instance, just look, you know, he's winning a place like Nashua. Nashua is a place that, frankly, Democrats usually do well in a general. This was a place she needed to win.
Yeah.
This was always a place that John McCain's headquarters would always be in Nashua. Nashua was the heart of sort of McCain country. I was always looking at Nashua to see, and she's not winning there. And in some of these other places, his numbers are just gigantic. Sorry, these are tiny little things.
Seabrook.
Right. This is where everybody in Massachusetts has to go to buy fireworks. Okay. It's the place you go across the border. You know, so it gives you a hint, right? Hey, live free or die.
Right.
A live free or die place is a 50-point victory for Trump. That sort of fits, does it
Chuck
not?
Todd with the Roman candle data point, which I appreciate.
The important firework demographic.
Our crack panel is standing by. We're going to get to them in a second, but I want to bring in the moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, who joins me now. She's got some new reporting. Kristen, I know you've been working your sources. You've had some conversations, some deep conversations with the Haley campaign. What are they telling you?
So they are defiant, just like Nikki Haley is defiant. They say they still have a path. Only 2 states have voted. It is way too early to declare this race over. Most importantly, Tom, because this is the question that I continue to put to them, how do you convince your supporters? How do you convince your donors to stay on board? They say, look, they still have a ton of cash in the bank. They say they still have the support of donors to move forward because she is marching on to her home state. So that's the messaging coming out of the Haley campaign. But here's the reality check and why it does get so complicated, in part because of the numbers that Chuck just laid out. New Hampshire is tailor-made for Nikki Haley because 45% of voters, according to exit polls, say that they are independents. Very few other states match that, maybe a Massachusetts down the road. But when you think about South Carolina, where Trump has a double-digit lead, when you think about those Super Tuesday states, the math doesn't necessarily get better for her. In fact, you have larger swaths of voters who describe themselves as Republicans. And that's why it becomes more uphill for her.
Yeah, if you were Nikki Haley, you could say, listen, New Hampshire's going to be the electorate writ small.
Yes.
I did well here, but as Chuck's pointed out, she did okay, right?
That's right. And in talking to my sources leading up to tonight, they were focused on that margin. Would she be able to hold him to single digits? And that's what Governor Sununu, one of her top surrogates, has been arguing. Look, we're going to have a strong finish here. That's what they were signaling that they were hoping for. That would, I think, in their opinion, have been a win. We're still waiting for the vote to come in. But again, if she can't argue that she kept him to single digits, it just gets very complicated. The other point that I would make is that let's do a split screen and check in with the Biden camp. From their perspective, it seems like the general election has begun today.
Because they want to run against Trump, and they just put out an announcement. Yeah,
out an announcement and a campaign shakeup.
Yeah,
which is a sign that they are seeing the red flags in the polling. They are seeing that former President Trump is incredibly competitive in some of these key states that propelled Biden to the White House, and former President Biden and his team have clearly taken a hard look at their campaign and have made the realization that they've got to get into go mode now, given this momentum that we are seeing from Trump. And by the way, just one more point I'll make. We're not just talking about momentum. We're talking about math, too, because Trump is racking up delegates with each.
You've covered the Republicans and Donald Trump. And the Republican Party, how it changed since 2016. Talk to us about sort of the machine that Nikki Haley's going to be up against. Because some voters out there, some viewers may be saying, well, why doesn't she just stay in it if she's got the money? But she's going to be up against a lot more than just negative ads. There's this pressure campaign that's going to build.
It's such an important point, Tom. And we saw that today with the head of the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, putting out a statement basically saying now is a time for unity. She put that statement out before the polls had closed. We are seeing Republicans close ranks around Donald Trump. You have the endorsement by Tim Scott and the delegation from South Carolina. You have, as Garrett was just mentioning, Senator Cornyn, Deb Fischer, who've now come out and endorsed Donald Trump. But guess what else you have? You have Republicans in Biden districts starting to endorse Donald Trump. And that's a significant step, I think, in what we are seeing, this coalescing, the Republican Party really coalescing around Donald Trump. So Nikki Haley's going to be up against all of that. I would just point out, look, she's still watching these returns come in, as we all are. She's still watching to see what the final tally is going to be. Ron DeSantis did the same thing last week, and then he looked at a lot of polling and had some hard conversations. So we'll have to see what happens as we get closer to South Carolina, because if she loses in her home state, Tom, it's one thing to lose in New Hampshire. If she loses in her home state, that could potentially jeopardize her political future if she has aspirations for 2020.
If she gets booked on Meet the Press for Sunday and then suddenly cancels, we there might be something going on there.
That's the tell sign. Don't think we haven't asked already.
Kristen Welker, always great to have you.
It's great to be here, Tom. Thank you.
Republican Congressman and Trump supporter Mike Collins of Georgia joins us now from the Trump campaign headquarters. Representative, explain this to me, right? If we all believe in democracy, we all love democracy, why don't we let the process play out? Why shouldn't Nikki Haley stay in this race as long as she can?
Well, I think it's we need to go ahead and just close this thing down now and get on to the general election. It's very important that we stop playing games with a primary that you have no chance in. She's not going to win. She's not going to be the nominee. She has no chance of winning, and especially if she can't even get close in New Hampshire, where it is a more liberal state. She is the more liberal candidate in this primary. She's not going to carry South Carolina. She's not going to carry Nevada. So why keep going through the motions when we could get a good head start on making sure that we turn out the vote in November and get President Trump back in the White House?
But, Representative, aren't you concerned? I mean, even in your home state, right, the president has been indicted for election interference, right? He has more than 90 criminal counts against him. Are you worried that you may have a candidate who can't even run or has been convicted?
Not one bit. You know, Donald Trump was loved in this country up until the point where he became president and started implementing great America First agenda policies. And the deep state decided we need to get rid of this guy, and we'll do it any way we can. These are all bogus charges. I think everybody's even seeing now that the wheels are falling off the bus fast on that case down in Georgia, to the point to where you may have an indictment on Fani Willis and the prosecutor for what they've been doing.
Yeah, it's unclear if there'll be an indictment against them, but we know they are now obviously being investigated, and that's trying to be figured out down there in Georgia. As this race continues, would you put pressure on Nikki Haley? I mean, vocally, on social media? Is that going to be necessary, or should you guys at least wait till South Carolina and see what happens there?
You know, I would hope that Nikki Haley takes the opportunity tomorrow while she's in South Carolina to go ahead and set her speech up and get out of the race and get behind and put her support behind Donald Trump tomorrow. And then we get this thing closed out and we move on with President Trump as being our nominee, which he will be at the end of the day, and get started on our general election.
You know, the Biden-Harris re-election team has put out a statement essentially saying and agreeing with you that the results tonight confirm Donald Trump has all but locked up the GOP nomination. That's a direct quote. Why do you think the Democrats want to run so badly against former President Trump if President Trump can beat Biden, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know what their reasoning would be, since I'm clearly not in the Democrat camp, but I can tell you what the American people want. And they want back what they had during that Trump administration and those policies that had this economy in this country humming like a sewing machine. They want back that border security that we had down there on the southern border. And they want back that peace through strength that we had with our military. It is so obvious, and people across this country, and you know, we've been out there. I was in Ohio last week. We came up here today, and we have just been out among the motoring public just to see what the issues are and what the concerns that they have. And those are the exact concerns. The American people want to get back what they had during the Trump administration. And come November, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to take our country back.
All right, Representative, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining our coverage here of the New Hampshire primary. Joining me now is Republican strategist Sarah Fagan and Robert Gibbs, former press secretary for President Obama and an NBC News analyst. And I should mention, I think, a host of Hacks on Tap, right? One of the largest growing podcasts in America, possibly. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. You work in the Republican Party. You've consulted Republicans. Tonight's results, does Nikki Haley need to drop out, or should she continue to fight another day?
Well, I think she doesn't have to drop out. I think, you know, as has been talked about tonight, there's a hard path for her. There doesn't appear to be a path for her to accumulate the delegates needed to win based on these results and based on the presumption that she's not going to do well in South Carolina. But, look, I think if you were making an argument to her to stay in the race, you would say you've got a, 77-year-old likely Republican nominee with a lot of legal challenges before him. You have an 81-year-old incumbent president. The odds of that being the case on Election Day, those two people, being the nominees, perhaps that's, 80%, but it's not 100%. And so why not just stay in and see what happens and accumulate some delegates? And I think, that's certainly an argument that I hear being made, in the Republican Party in some corners.
Robert, we saw a campaign shakeup, if you will, with the Biden-Harris reelect team tonight. The economy numbers moving in favor of President Biden. But there's one thing you can't change, right, which poll after poll shows voters are really concerned about, even Democratic voters, and that's Joe Biden's age. How does a campaign like his get over that fact, and how can you still show the American people that he still has several years left in him to run this country?
Well, they're just going to have to show it each and every day in the campaign. They're going to have to go out there. He's going to have to prosecute the case. He's going to have energetic events. People are going to need to see him. I hope you'll see debates in the fall. They're just going to have to project through this campaign that he's capable of doing this job. He's not going to get any younger. Neither is Donald Trump. In terms of what happened in the campaign, I think it was a smart decision. Look, you had two of President Biden's most senior and trusted aides in the White House. And quite frankly, you can't run a campaign these days from inside the White House. It's too complicated. There are too many decisions to be made. And it just makes a lot of sense to move those people out of their day jobs into running the campaign in a more forceful way. I think, Donald Trump has gotten closer tonight to being the nominee. I think in the end, that's a good thing for Joe Biden. I think having a longer campaign, putting that choice in front of people is what, quite frankly, is likely to be more successful than a shorter campaign where people don't fully understand the choice.
Robert, there's direct and indirect pressure when it comes to campaigns and having people drop out and trying to put pressure. You've been there. You've been there where you were on a winning campaign and there were very established names on the other side. What are some of the ways, sort of directly and indirectly, they're going to put the pressure on Nikki Haley to sort of drop out of this race? We've already seen Ronna McDaniel come out with some strong language. We know former President Trump, he's already on Truth Social tonight. What else do you think we should expect to see?
Well, I think you'll see that external pressure, as you just talked about, with members of the party. Some will do it overtly, like you've mentioned. Some will do it subtly. Somebody like a John Cornyn, Senator Cornyn from Texas, who had said he wasn't going to endorse in the primary, endorses. That's sort of letting it be known to Nikki Haley where he is in this race, right? He's a member of the Senate Republican leadership. I think what you'll see quietly, and the real question is, can she maintain a fundraising and a donor base that allows her to continue this for another 31 days between now and when she gets to the vote in South Carolina? And that will be, quite frankly, maybe more telling than a congressional endorsement is, does she have the ability to run a campaign in South Carolina that's capable of winning? She can run that race. She can be on the ballot. But if she doesn't have strong TV buys, if they're not investing in a field operation that can win the state, then, quite frankly, she's just going through the motions. I think whether she's in this race in a week will be more telling than if she's in this race or that she said that she's in this race tonight.
I got to interrupt you, Robert. Thank you. We're going to go now to the Trump Victory Watch Party in New Hampshire. We understand the former president, surprisingly, is about to take the stage at any moment, pretty early. It's 9:20. We see him right there. He's walking the stage, taking his victory lap, going to soak some of this in. We can see the MAGA hats are raised along with cell phones. The collection of American flags there, and then some of his surrogates and his biggest endorsers over the last couple of days and weeks. Vivek Ramaswamy right there, the entrepreneur, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. The president is he by the podium? I can't see with all the cell phones. No, he's still doing, no, I think it looks like he's still doing his victory lap. The interesting thing, as we mentioned about Senator Scott here, Senator Scott ran against former President Trump. I asked him why he wanted to run. And he told me he was the right person at the time. And then, interestingly enough, I haven't seen him have as much energy as since he's endorsed Trump and been on the stage with him and so excited to get behind him. And you wonder what is sort of the calculation between a lot of these guys, these surrogates who are coming by and endorsing Trump now, how many of them are thinking about, man, possibly we have a chance to be a running mate here. The rest of the Trump team coming together here. We've seen Jason Miller, Dan Scavino, others who have been in Trump's circle for a long time. Of course, his son Eric Trump is right there. And it sounds like former President Trump at any moment will take the stage, but he's enjoying the song, taking a lot of pictures, and we'll listen in for a second.
God bless the USA. Today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Whoa. USA, 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 USA. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody. This is a fantastic state. This is a great, great state. You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now. Three. We win it every time. We win the primary. We win the generals. We've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important. If you remember, in 2016, we came here and we needed that win, and we won by 21 points, and it was great. And today, I have to tell you, it was very interesting because I said, wow, what a great victory. But then somebody ran up to the stage all dressed up nicely when it was at 7. But now I just walked up and it's at 14. But she ran up when it was 7. And, you know, we have to do what's good for our party. And she was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost. And, you know, last week we had a little bit of a problem. And if you remember, Ron was very upset because she ran up and she pretended she won Iowa. And I looked around, I said, didn't she come in 3rd? Yeah, she came in 3rd. And then I looked at the polls. She was talking about most winnability, who's going to win. And I had one put up. I don't know if you see it, but I have one put up. We've won almost every single poll in the last 3 months against crooked Joe Biden. Almost every poll. And she doesn't win those polls. And she doesn't win those. This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night. And you have the now very unpopular governor of this state. This guy, he's got to be on something. I've never seen anybody with energy. He's like hopscotch. And, you know, I'm watching this guy, and 2 weeks ago he said, we're going to win in the landslide, we're going to win. About 3 days ago he started saying, well, we want to do well. That's a big difference. But I walked out just now, we're 14 points up, and I don't know what it's going to be. But when she was up here, it was like 6 or 7. And, you know, with like 7% of the vote counted. Now, let me just tell you, we had an unbelievable week last week in Iowa. We set a record. It was the best in the history of the caucus, in the history. And I remember I sort of had the same feeling. I'm up and I'm watching, and I said, she's taking a victory lap. And we beat her so badly. But Ron beat her also. You know, Ron came in 2nd and he left. She came in 3rd and she's still hanging around. The other thing, she only got 25% of the Republican votes. I don't know if you saw that. Tremendous numbers of independents came out because in this state, because you have a governor that doesn't frankly know what the hell he's doing in this state, in the Republican primary, they accept Democrats to vote. In fact, I think they had 4,000 Democrats before October 6th. They already voted. Now, they're only voting because they want to make me look as bad as possible. Because if you remember, we won in 2016. And if you really remember, and if you want to play it straight, we also won in 2020. By more. And we did much better in 2020 than we did in 2016. But as they said, we lost by a whisker, just by a whisker. No. But we can't let that happen. You know, you have to have people that speak up. I said, I can go up and I can say to everybody, oh, thank you for the victory. It's wonderful. Or I can go up and say, who the hell was the imposter that went up on the stage before and like claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. She had to win. The governor said, she's going to win, she's going to win, she's going to win. Then she failed badly. Now, I have here, if he promises to do it in a minute or less, but the only person more angry than, let's say me, but I don't get too angry, I get even. The only person... because he was there, and he did fantastically well, by the way, and then he endorsed me. And we don't have to talk about Tim Scott, who, by the way, just got engaged, we have to tell you. And that's more important than all of this stuff. But a man that got to know her very well is Vivek. I said, Vivek. I said, Vivek, go up and say a few words about it. He has to do it in 1 minute or less, and then we're going to just say, we had one hell of a night tonight. And one other thing, before Vivek comes, do you see that poll? We're going to put it up. We have beaten Biden. You could almost say, who can't? Who the hell can't? The man can't put two sentences together. He can't find the stairs off a stage. Who can't? But Vivek, 1 minute or less. Go do it, Vivek.
What we saw tonight is America first defeating America last. That's what we saw tonight. If you want America last, you can go to Joe Biden. You got another candidate still apparently in the Republican primary. Cut your Social Security to fork over more money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. Go to Nikki Haley. But you know who delivered a double-digit victory tonight? It is a double-digit victory as of right now, is this man, Donald J. Trump, the leader of America First. And that means something. Now, USA and Donald Trump, America First. Now, I got 30 seconds left. I want to make this point here, okay? We got to say this. We got to say this right. What we see right now with her continuing in this race is the ugly underbelly of American politics, where the mega donors are trying to do one thing when we, the people, say another. And it's up to us, we, the people, to at long last say, hell no. We, the people, create a government that is accountable to us. And we, the people, have said tonight we want, again, as we did in Iowa, Donald J. Trump. And so you want to actually speak truth. That's the truth tonight. And the only thing they're rooting for
watching a portion of Donald Trump's victory speech there in New Hampshire. Things took a little bit of a weird turn. He gave over the podium to Vivek Ramaswamy, who then proceeded to attack Nikki Haley and go after her pretty aggressively. A couple quick fact checks here. The former president said that he's won every single New Hampshire election he's been in, which is not true, including general elections. He also said Nikki Haley doesn't beat Joe Biden in the polls. That is also not true. Nikki Haley has beaten the president in several polls. I want to go to Tara right now. Tara, you know, Vivek was just talking about the ugly side of politics. We were having a conversation talking about the viciousness and how bad it'll get. When will it start? The former president took the stage, and he pretty much the only thing he talked about was Nikki Haley, attacking her over and over again. And I got to tell you, what stood out to me is Senator Tim Scott in the background, an elected senator from the state of South Carolina who was appointed by Nikki Haley, sort of just smiling and going along with this. Is this what we can expect over the next month before South Carolina?
Absolutely. And I mean, South Carolina has been an ugly place for politics and Republican politics before Donald Trump. So imagine what's going to happen between now and then. The fact that Senator Tim Scott was there and just perfectly okay with the viciousness, again, speaks to the lack of character that Senator Scott has demonstrated during this time of Donald Trump. And it's very disappointing. He was asked very directly whether he was comfortable with Donald Trump's tone, and he couldn't. He made excuses for it, including Donald Trump saying that January 6th prisoners who were convicted are hostages. He was okay with that, too. So I'm not surprised that Senator Scott continues to debase himself. And for Vivek Ramaswamy to say anything about that, this is a guy who went after Nikki Haley's teenage daughter. So he has continued to lower the bar here when it comes to any type of integrity as well. So, but this is par for the course. Yeah. This is what the Trump campaign represents, and this is what we are up against going into the general election. It's never going to change, and anyone who thinks otherwise is it's living in a fantasy here. This is what it is.
Hogan, does the former president you worked with, does he need to do this? He even said, quote, I don't get angry, I get even. He literally said that. Sure. He said the quiet part out loud.
Always.
It's going to get uglier than this?
Oh, yeah. This is going to be the longest general election we've ever had in the history of this country. It's going to start pretty quickly here in the next several weeks. And these both camps, I'm sure you can speak to this too, this is going to be a ton of money spent and a ton of mud thrown all over the place between now and then. And look, I get he said he won New Hampshire. He didn't. That's different than someone like Joe Biden saying he was jailed with Nelson Mandela or that he started the civil rights movement. Both of those things can have. He says that. I mean, don't look at me.
I mean,
but I'm saying one of those has a significant weight. But I will say something Donald Trump did mention about Nikki Haley. The $4 million ad buy, that was for her to try and say, look, we're going to continue. Those things can be pulled down very easily. It's a campaign tactic. Yeah. Everyone knows that. But she made a point in her speech to say, now we're on to South Carolina where I can't be lied about. Basically, they know me best there. That's undercutting her own argument because she's down by 35 points. So if they know you best and you can't be lied about and you're down 35 points, it's going to be very difficult for her.
Richard, we're getting formal here. Rich Lowry, you know, the Biden reelect team has already put out a statement sort of saying that Trump is a nominee and they're going to go after him. But I have to ask you, is this moment important for Donald Trump? Because he's sort of vilifying the female rival in this race. He's going after her with a group of men on that stage. And I just wonder if that just sends the wrong image right now. He's up by double digits. Does he need to do this? Is it worth it?
He won the New Hampshire primary by quite a comfortable margin. He's won Iowa and New Hampshire, and he got up and gave a speech where he literally described himself as angry. How does that make any sense? You know, and this is the bifurcated Trump you get. Sometimes you get him on teleprompter, which he had in Iowa. They wrote a nice speech for him. He was very friendly and nice to everyone, thanked people, which Hogan thought maybe would happen tonight, but didn't. And this was more his true feelings, right? He's aggrieved that this race is happening still. He's upset about it, and he can't and won't hide it. So, you know, this isn't like a decisive moment in the campaign, but, you know, you have people watching. Why not be gracious? Why not be optimistic? And then he's still going to go on Truth Social and say whatever.
One quick point about that, though. Yeah. He's also right now currently in a court trial defamation lawsuit with E. Jean Carroll for the second time, where he was credibly accused of raping her and sexual assault. So the idea,
is a debatable word, but okay.
Okay, that the judge used the term raped her. So that's not debatable at this point. It's a defamation. It's a defamation trial. The judge said it. It's New York law.
Be true then.
But anyway, so it is. So the idea that he's going after the female candidate with men on the stage doesn't matter. He's been a misogynist his whole career. He doesn't care about those dynamics.
David Plouffe, who joins us now, you ran winning campaigns for former President Obama. Does a moment like this matter?
Every moment a campaign matters, and you can't squander one. So Trump's unconventional. You know, my view is he probably watched every word Nikki Haley said, and it got him really upset. What he should have done is thanked the voters of New Hampshire, thanked the voters of Iowa, and said the general election has started, and ignore Nikki Haley. This is like first grade political practice.
Right.
He didn't do that. Now, the question is he may start doing that later tonight or tomorrow, but that, I think there was a huge opportunity missed. Now, you know, at the end of the day, the one thing I'd say about both Iowa and New Hampshire is Biden won in part, not solely, in part because he did well enough, not just with Republican voters, but independents who were basically Republicans. And there's now a bigger pool.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Trump's picked up again. Let's listen in.
Not big reasons. A little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about. But she will be under investigation within minutes. And so would Ron have been. But he decided to get out. He decided to get out. Now, Vivek, I don't think would be at all because he's perfect, right? And Tim Scott, I know would never. That's no chance. Hey, Tim, do you want to say something? Come on. I want him to say something.
Look. New Hampshire. The president said a double-digit win in New Hampshire, and you delivered a double-digit win for President Trump. But I'm going to invite you to my home state starting tomorrow, where this election is over. It is time for the Republican Party to coalesce around our nominee and the next president of the United States, Donald Trump. Let's get that party started tonight.
What a good guy. What a good man he is. But just remember, I did hear Nikki say, and now it's off to South Carolina. Well, I love South Carolina. I love it. But, you know, she forgot one thing. Next week, it's Nevada. Next week, it's Nevada. It's not South Carolina. We love South Carolina, but next week, it's Nevada. And I'm pleased to announce we just won Nevada. We just won 100%. because all of them, they looked at it and they took polls, and I was polling at 95% to 4 or 5%, and they decided not to play in Nevada. So we just won Nevada. We have a man from Nevada here, Steve Wynn, wherever he may be, and John Paulson, the great John Paulson, made plenty of money in Nevada. Doesn't live there, but he makes a hell of a lot of money. He makes money everywhere he goes, actually. So money machine. Well, maybe we'll put you, you know what? Put him at Treasury. You want to make a little money? Let's put you. Anyways, good to have you guys. But we go to Nevada, and that's been won. So we pick up all of those delegates. And then we do go to South Carolina, where we've done really well, where I've done well. We have a great governor and lieutenant governor and great everything, because almost every one of them have endorsed me. 2 great senators, which is hard. I mean, did you ever think that she actually appointed you, Tim? And think of it, appointed, and you're the senator of his state, and she endorsed me. You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's why he's a great politician. That's why he's a great politician. So this is a great evening, and it is, you know, we are going to Nevada for a little while. We're not going to have to do too much. We have a great team there. But it's a team that we can now send someplace else. They did a fantastic job, but and it's a fantastic place, really a fantastic place. But we'll be leaving there very quickly. We'll head out to South Carolina, where I think we're going to win easily. I think we're 50 points up, 5-0. 5-0, 50 points up on a person that was governor. That tells you something. But I felt I should do this because I find in life you can't let people get away with bullshit, okay? You can't. You just can't do that. And when I watched her in the fancy dress that probably wasn't so fancy come up, I said, what's she doing? We won. And she did the same thing last week, but he was much more angry about it than I was. I said, get up there and you let him know. We are going to win this. We have no choice. If we don't win, I think our country is finished. I do. I believe our country is finished. We have an opportunity to do something so amazing. And the good news, and the reason we have such support, the best numbers I've ever had, the reason we have support is because they are so bad at what they're doing and so evil, and they're destroying our country. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank
We've just been listening to former President Trump. I wanted to come back to our panel. Hogan Gidley worked for former President Trump. Hogan, why is he so angry? He just won by double digits. I'm confused.
I think some of the concern that Donald Trump has is shared by many on the campaign, which is they're ready to go ahead and start focusing all their fire, all their money, all their resources on Joe Biden. And every minute that Nikki Haley stays in this race, it prevents that from happening. And with lawsuits looming, as we talked about, Tara, you know, the money's going to be spent in a lot of different ways. He doesn't want to spend more time, effort, energy worried about Nikki. He wants to focus on the general election.
Why? He's up by 35 points against her. Ignore her. If she's no threat to him at all, and she's delusional, which we've all said that it's really a fait accompli that he's going to be the nominee, he can decide to start the general election right now.
And he has talked about
the
election in general terms for a while now. But tonight, I think watching Nikki Haley deciding to stay in this race
because he
probably got him a little.
Stand the fact that the woman in the race did not concede and bow down the way Tim Scott and Vivek and the rest of them have done for him, and he cannot stand it. It's not in the fiber of his being, can't stand the fact that she hasn't bowed the knee yet.
Rich, cynical people watch politics since 2016. They'll say nothing matters, right? Because they've just seen that literally nothing mattered in 2016. But I do want to ask you about something. I mean, he attacked her dress, right? And there's also the question of temperament again, right? And then you're almost reminded of how former President Trump can get when he's upset about something.
No, of course.
Do you think a moment like this matters, and he needs to be careful?
Well, it's not decisive, but, you know, as David said, it's going to be a close race. Every moment matters potentially. But he talked about her giving an early speech more than he mentioned Joe Biden. And you're absolutely right. He has a big megaphone. He can turn the attention to Biden entirely, but he is so personally offended by this. He couldn't let it go. And an underappreciated aspect of his primary campaign, maybe he's going to win anyway, he has a good team, a smart team, a shrewd team that he's listened to.
A disciplined team. A disciplined team.
And there's no way they told him to do that. No way.
Oh, yeah. No. 100%. Garrett Haake joins us tonight from Nashua, New Hampshire. He's been covering the Trump campaign for us. Garrett, get us up to speed here. Give us your first reactions to that speech.
Well, Tom, I was stunned at how different that speech was from the speech that he gave in Iowa, where Donald Trump walked out onto the stage and started talking about unity and tried to be magnanimous and joking about the field, clearly looking ahead to the general election. That Donald Trump was nowhere to be found tonight. I mean, within minutes of taking the stage, he was suggesting Chris Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire, was on drugs and lying about winning New Hampshire in the general election in 2020. I mean, it's unbelievable reversion to the mean here, reversion to rally Donald Trump as opposed to general election Donald Trump. And for probably a pretty significant national audience tuning in tonight to watch the results of a big contested primary, that's frankly probably a gift for the Biden administration, for the Biden campaign, to see that version of Donald Trump tonight, not the Iowa version of Donald Trump. And I caught just the tail end of your conversation there with Tara about the idea of why doesn't Donald Trump just ignore her and wait for Nikki Haley to go away, to basically run out of money and lose this race. I've been asking that question all week to Trump advisors, and the answer that they gave me was abundantly clear on stage tonight. It's because Donald Trump cannot do that. He only has one speed when it comes to perceived enemies, and that is to attack, attack, attack. And so even if it gives Nikki Haley more life by continuing to draw attention back to her campaign, which might struggle to get it when they're not functionally competing in Nevada, when there are no debates, he's going to keep attacking her because it's the only way he knows how to run a campaign. Whether his advisors want it to be that way or not, they know they can't stop it, and that's what voters and viewers across the country are going to get in moments like this.
Garrett Haake first. Garrett, we appreciate that. I want to go to David Plouffe now. David, you know, he had maybe not even a good night, a great night, because he did well in New Hampshire with Republican voters. He did well with independents as well. And then he came out and he had this moment, this speech. Do you think the Biden campaign is sitting back watching this going, this is what we want, this is perfect, this is the guy we want to run against?
Sure, but Trump may not give that to you every night. But, yeah, if this is going to be his M.O., and again, you're squandering time. I mean, Trump should have called the general election starting today. The Biden folks, I think, have. So it was an awful speech. I mean, the only thing worse than the awful makeup he had tonight, which, by the way, is getting worse and worse, was that speech. Now, again, is it going to swing 10 or 20,000 votes in Wisconsin? No. But independent voters, Republican voters, and this is the thing, okay, he won New Hampshire convincingly. But over 40% of people in New Hampshire, almost 50% in Iowa, chose somebody else, okay? And he's the dominant frontrunner. And politics, to some extent, is about math, and it's about data and modeling. And this is going to give the Biden campaign a great, rich, huge number of Republican and Republican-leaning independents to target, more than they did in 20. Most of those people will go home to Donald Trump. But Joe Biden doesn't need all of them. And this kind of performance just reminds people, I don't want to go back to that. He actually had a chance tonight, I think, not just to kick off the general election, but, you know, similar to what he did in Iowa, kind of have a big moment, which is I'm focused on that. But I just don't think he's able to do that. I mean, he's enraged at Nikki Haley. But he should, in my view, as a political, he shouldn't go to South Carolina at all. Maybe one trip, that's it. He should go to Wisconsin, he should go to Arizona, he should go to Georgia, and I don't think he's going to do that.
Chuck, did he just give a gift to Nikki Haley?
Well, it's interesting. It could sort of get her to dig in, right? You know, sort of at this point. And he does have a way of sort of almost encouraging his opponents to keep fighting and to keep coming back. And I think ultimately, this is what none of us have the answer to, because none of us are Nikki Haley. What does she want? Where does she want in that tier? We know Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy all have their own ambition. They decided they want a future in Trump's Republican Party. Nikki Haley has to ask herself, is there a future for Nikki Haley in Trump's Republican Party? Or does she try to go down, sort of what the calculation Ted Cruz made in 2016, then, of course, after Trump won, he sort of caved in, right? But he was assuming Trump's going to lose. I'll be the one to be able to stood there. There's an opportunity for Nikki Haley to be the lone person that kept trying to fight if he does lose. It's a lonely place to be. It'll be a very, but I go back to, none of us know, what does she want? She'll never be the running mate. And I think if she makes that calculation, That's an incentive in her own mind to stay in and maybe try to build a case for a new Republican Party. But that, to me, is the only reason to stay in, that she wants to essentially pick up the pieces if she believes Trump's going to blow this.
Rich Lowry?
So I was just going to say that that speech made me think, the most favorable Nikki Haley scenario would be to win New Hampshire, obviously. And then imagine what that speech would have been if he lost, right? If he's angry if he won, how outrageous is he going to be if he lost? And you know what he immediately do? Say he was cheated out of it. It was rigged. And then maybe something shakes loose. I probably wouldn't. But then you might have Republicans, wait a minute, this is our process. But probably wouldn't have happened. But that would have been the most favorable possible scenario for her.
Listen, speeches like this, when Trump behaves like this, it reminds people at the Lincoln Project, we call them Bannon line voters, because those are the voters that Steve Bannon said in 2016, the 4 to 7% of Republicans or moderates that if Trump loses them, then he'll lose the election. We believe that Bannon line has expanded to 7 to 12% because of Dobbs, mainly, and because of temperament and people looking at this going, we don't want another 4 years of this. So every time Donald Trump does this, I believe that Bannon line, that expands in places, to David's point, like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona. This doesn't help them. For the general election, this is what people are reminded of when they're going to the ballot box and they say, well, Joe Biden may be a little old, but Donald Trump is old too, and this is how he behaves. We do not want an America that looks like that.
Shows? Trump's victories?
Yeah, that's right. This is what's going to lead the morning shows.
Hogan, you've been in the rooms. You've seen him when he's not been happy. You've seen him after moments like this. Will anybody in the campaign, anybody in his circle, tell him, hey, boss, that was a mistake?
I think there are plenty of times that we're honest with Donald Trump about how we feel about certain things, and that happens quite honestly often. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes we have different opinions than the former president. But the fact is, while we're making a big deal of it here, we're on to South Carolina now, and I don't know how much this is actually going to matter to a voter in this moment, because this speech isn't going to be played in totality.
Not in the primary, it doesn't matter. I'm talking general.
Right, but I'm saying, as David pointed out, this isn't going to be Donald Trump every day. So the question becomes, how does he keep that MAGA base, which he obviously has, and I think this doesn't do anything to change that. How does he expand and get some of those independents? And I would argue at this point, things like this don't matter all that much. I know people on this panel and people on other networks are going to make hay of it, and I understand why they would. But I don't know to the average voter out there who's trying to make ends meet, who has crime spiking in their neighborhoods, or people pouring into their neighborhoods illegally and unlawfully from other countries, are going to be too concerned about his rhetoric at this speech.
But you don't think it's a reminder? I mean, you don't think it's a reminder?
It's a reminder of Donald Trump. And how his personality can be. But I think a lot of people are more concerned about policy at this point. But that's the argument. That's going to be the campaign. They're going to try and, on the other side, they're going to say, look at this man. We're going to say, look at Joe Biden. And that's going to be it.
Here's something I'm trying to figure out. He lost in 2020. And when you're trying to come back, anytime a losing candidate wants to come back and win over voters, they usually admit, here's what I'm going to do different. I hear you. I heard you. I'm going to do this differently. What's he going to say? Is he going to say different? Is he going to say, you know what, I'm going to, what he's saying is, boy, I'm not going to bring in establishment people. Like what he's talking about differently. He is not promising that it'll be, a little more organized, a little less chaotic. And look, this goes to the whole deplatforming. By the way, this is the whole deplatforming.
He told us what he's
the mistake of deplatforming, in all honesty. Because when he's platformed, people get uncomfortable.
David, the counter argument here, though, is that with the wrong track through the roof for President Biden, and voters on the Democratic side, Republican voters, independents, all concerned about his age, you may also want a candidate that projects strength, right? A candidate that projects energy. Obviously, maybe not exactly like this, but that's something former President Trump is going to be thinking about as well.
Well, it's one reason that people think that Trump is a lot younger than he is. He's got that sort of almost feral quality. But, there's a fine line between that and chaos. And this election, I think, will be decided on. There could be a foreign policy event, even beyond what we're already living through, could be an economic shock. But it's going to be a swath of voters basically saying, can I swallow another 4 years of Trump? And I think that's going to be less about policy, as important as that is, and more about this. And if, to Chuck's point, if
you think it'll be more about this than, say, the economy?
The economy is important. Dobbs and abortion are going to be important. Democracy is important. Immigration is important. I'm just saying these are two universally known figures. And basically, that's the question, which is Biden is obviously a flawed candidate right now compared to where you'd like to see. I think the race is going to look different in 2 or 3 months as people really zero in. But Trump is going to be the major figure in this election, quite frankly. And are people saying who voted against him last time come home and say, I want more of that.
That's right.
And that's where I think it's interesting to me, because Trump needs to be in the growth business, as any company does. You're not satisfied with your market share. And that's the one thing that's always puzzled me. He doesn't seem that interested in that. And tonight was an opportunity to signal, hey, even if he doesn't apologize for things he did, say, I get, and this is about immigration, it's about the economy. So to me, the question will be, maybe he does that tomorrow. But we'll see at the end of the day. But I think that's what this election comes down to. And the other thing is, he does have an advantage, I think, on turnout. The one thing I'd say is a lot of Republicans are voting against him. Most of those people vote for him. Most of those people would vote for him. But that's where I think Biden's got the biggest issue is right now you'd give Trump an advantage, I think, on the turnout question.
Right, energize him.
Right.
All right, Dave, we appreciate that. I want to go back to Garrett Hick. He's actually speaking to some Trump voters from that victory watch party. Garrett.
Tom, I'm trying to capture a little bit of the enthusiasm that we saw at this party, and I want to bring in Bridget Trepsis. She's from Salem, New Hampshire. She's a big Trump fan. Were you at all surprised by the result today?
No, it was a no-brainer. I knew he was going to win. I did a lot of praying, too, but still, I knew he was going to win.
What do you make of what we saw today? The former president came as close as he possibly could to saying that this race should just be over now, that it is effectively over. Do you agree with that? Why shouldn't everybody else in the country get the chance New Hampshire got to have a vote?
I'm with you. You're right. They should all get a chance to have a vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you make of the manner in which he kind of started talking today about this race? He seemed to be more interested in talking about Nikki Haley than he was about Joe Biden. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, when he talks to the people out there, it's like he's zeroing in on me. It's like he's talking to me. And I feel like everybody feels that way. Like he talks to the people, you know, he's just, I can't explain it, but I'm crazy about the guy.
How do you convince your friends and neighbors, the people you know who might have voted for Nikki Haley or might have voted for Donald Trump in 2016 or 2020, who are very skeptical about kind of getting back on the Trump train? What do you say to them to convince them that this is the way to go?
Well, you know what it is? They don't know the facts. They listen to the fake news out there, you know. I know you're in the news, but they listen to the fake news, and that's what they're going by. They don't know what's really going on.
Humor me. What are the fake facts? Try me. Seriously.
What is, like that he's going to be a dictator. He's going to do this. He's going to, you know, it's all a lot of baloney. He's going to take care of this country. Look where we are today and where we were 4 years ago.
What does taking care of this country look like? Is there some specific issue where you feel like this guy gets it and nobody else does?
Well, taking care of this country, people can go to the grocery store and prices, gas was what, $1.87? Look at it today. You know, a lot of people are really suffering. We're hurting. They don't have the money. They're going out looking for 3 jobs, never mind 2. You know?
Prices are going back down. The economy, all the economic numbers are kind of going in Joe Biden's direction right now. If the economy improves substantially before November, does any of that change your view about where we are as a country?
No, it's not. Biden's not the one improving it. It'll be Trump that's going to improve it.
Okay, all right, we'll set that aside for now. I want to ask you, because there's so much conversation about Donald Trump's legal challenges, right? He's supposed to be in court later this week, the defamation case, classified documents, the stolen election stuff. What do you make of all of that?
It's all crap.
All crap. Not one of those things is true.
I don't believe any of that's true.
He's found liable for defamation, for sexual assault. You don't believe any of it?
Look who's trying him. Look at the judge in there. Hello, anybody home?
So what happened? Can only, Republican juries and Republican judges hold him accountable?
I don't think he's being treated fairly. You know, it's not right. If it was you in there, they wouldn't be treating you like they're treating him.
I mean, I hear that from Trump supporters all the time. If he gets convicted of something, if he gets convicted of mishandling classified documents, or if he gets convicted of trying to overturn the 2020 election results, does any of that change your mind?
No. Look at what's happening to Hunter Biden. What about the laptop?
Hunter Biden is not running for president.
But still, they're not doing nothing to him. You No?
So talk to me about what you expect to see in the fall. I mean, this could be one of the longest, ugliest general election campaigns that anybody remembers. Is that going to be good for the country to have these two guys going at it for the next 200 some odd days?
You know what? I feel it's going to be worth the wait because he's going to get in.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple more questions here, and then I'll let you go because they're looking to lock us in this ballroom here. The questions about Donald Trump's age. We've heard about Joe Biden's age for a long time. Nikki Haley started to raise questions about Donald Trump's age, suggesting he's not mentally with it. He's pushing 80. He would be into his 80s if he gets another term. How do you feel about that? Does that concern you at all?
Donald's my age, and it's only a number. It's what's up here. And he looks pretty damn good to me.
All right, Bridget. Well, if you want to run for president, we should talk. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for chatting with us. And I'm going to let you go now. I'm going to turn this back to Tom. Tom, I think that is.
Where can I see this?
You can watch it right now. Hang on, let me finish it up. But Tom, listen, this is so emblematic of the Trump supporters I've been talking to across this state. I mean, certainly of these things are just taken as articles of faith. The investigations aren't real. The court cases are not real. The devotion here is something that's unmatched by any political candidate I've ever covered. Whether there's enough of them to matter in a general election, whole other question. But you cannot question the commitment that these supporters have for Donald Trump in a state like this.
The loyalty and the dedication is there, Garrett. We appreciate all your reporting tonight. Chuck Todd back with me here. Chuck, walk us through the calendar and what Nikki Haley is going to be up against over the next few weeks and months.
Well, look, here it is. We're at New Hampshire right now, January 23rd. 16 days later is that thing that Trump was describing where he's the only one that actually is trying to get the delegates.
Explain that real quick if you can, shortly
Basically,
if you can.
Look, they created a caucus and a primary, and the party's running the caucus, and they said if you register in the primary, you can't be on the caucus ballot. Anyway.
And he's saying he's winning the caucus. Gotcha.
This is why he can't be stopped from the nomination. Right. But then, look, you got to go another 2 weeks before you get to South Carolina on February 24th, right? So you get that. Then, to me, this is where I think if there is going to be another state where Donald Trump could have problems, it is Michigan. They have the same rules as New Hampshire. South Carolina does too, but there is going to be a South Carolina Democratic primary that takes place before this, which will take potential voters away that Haley could have wooed into that primary.
And then after that, you hit Super Tuesday.
And then after they hit Super Tuesday. So, you know, ultimately, I personally, obviously, South Carolina is probably her Waterloo, but Michigan is sort of the last gasp.
Quick prediction. We got about 20 seconds before the top of the hour. You think she makes it to South Carolina, or do you think in the next 4 weeks something happens?
Ron DeSantis said he was going to go on, talked with some donors, and within 96 hours was out of the race. I think, let's see what the next 72 hours are like, but I have a feeling that'll matter.
Chuck Todd, we thank you for that. And that does it for me at this hour. But NBC News Now special coverage of the 2024 New Hampshire primary continues with my good friend Kristen Welker right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.